Hi, my name is Denise Henry, and I'm an instructional technologist at CSU Pueblo. I provide professional development and ed tech support to faculty in addition to administering the LMS. I also train staff to use technology around campus. Alexis Wolstein and I are contributing to a blog with a video series to document different activities that are happening during the time of the COVID shutdown. Alexis is the Assistant Professor of Library Services and Information Literacy Coordinator for our CSU Pueblo Library. She's also the Library Liaison to the College of Humanities and Social Sciences.
Thanks, Denise. As part of our series today, we're speaking to some of the very talented folks who run the teaching and learning centers here on the campus of CSU Pueblo. We have Abbey Davidson, the director of the Science Learning Center, and the assistant director of the Communities to Build Active STEM Engagement, or CBASE, what we most hear. Abbey also serves as the chair of the Administrative Professionals Council. Also with us is Chad Pickering, the Writing Room and Gen Ed Tutoring Center Director. Chad's also taught English syntax at CSU Pueblo and would love to continue raising awareness of the value of linguistic and mechanical competence. And finally, from the Math Learning Center, we have Jake Buchholz. Jake's the director of the Math Learning Center and also teaches various math courses here at CSU Pueblo, as well as coordinating the group learning program for college algebra. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. So to start with, can you each talk a bit about how you were approaching online tutoring before the shutdown? Were you doing any tutoring online before the situation necessitated it?
We were not doing online tutoring prior to the shutdown, so we had to make some rapid fire changes to make it happen.
I was also not doing anything online before now. It was a rush to get it working.
And I, of course, am a bit unique among my colleagues in that we at the Writing Room were offering an online service before the shutdown in the form of the Online Writing Lab, or OWL for short. And forgive me if I sound like I'm surreptitiously smuggling in an advertisement for our services. But yeah, we offer the Online Writing Lab, which is our email-based asynchronous method of providing writing tutorial support to students who otherwise couldn't come in for a face-to-face session. So that's what we were doing before the lockdown.
Can you help us understand how you transitioned on 2 days' notice to pivot to an online space?
It was a pretty frantic change for the Science Learning Center. I immediately started searching online for different platforms. I looked a little bit at doing Google Hangouts and started navigating that. And in talking with my tutors and informing them of these big changes that were about to happen, some of my lead tutors who are gamers were telling me about the platform Discord. I'm not a gamer. I was not previously familiar with it, and I was honestly a little skeptical of how it would work. But I decided to trust them, and they really helped set it up. They helped me set up the page, get it up and running. They even did a super rapid PowerPoint to have an emergency meeting with all the other tutors and teach the non-gamer folk how to utilize it as well, and got everybody set up. And yeah, it happened within 2 days that we went from being 100% in person to 100% online.
Jake, how did you pivot in the Math Learning Center?
Well, I knew about Discord ahead of time. I am a gamer and I've used it before. I was more worried about it being too unprofessional, but it really had the tools that I needed, and some of my tutors preferred it and convinced me to go with that. So I rushed to make a Discord server, and which is something that I had never done before either, by the way, even though I'd used the platform, and had them help make that as well, in fact.
And Chad, you were already online. Did you make any adjustments once we went completely remote?
Yes, indeed. I am a gamer, but I wasn't actually aware of how useful Discord could be because I was aware of the fact that it was used a lot for like live streaming and stuff like that. But come to think of it, I should have just bought stock in Discord before this whole thing because I'm sure its popularity has really blown up. Yeah, there was talk initially of just keeping our OWL service going, but then after a couple of conversations with both Jake and Abby, I decided to follow in their footsteps and sort of integrate with them a little bit more and have a little bit more consistency among the tutoring centers by creating a Discord server for both the Writing Room and the Gen Ed Tutoring Center. So I spent a long afternoon just setting up that server, and then of course eventually briefing my staff on how it would be used and everything. And from that point on, we were just completely 100% online.
And how about the students that you're serving? Did they seem to need a lot of onboarding to Discord, or were they able to pick it up pretty quickly?
I think overall the transition went pretty well for the students. The platform is something that a lot of the students were already familiar with. It's pretty intuitive. There's not a lot to set up. It's free. It works well on a phone or computer. Some students needed a little bit more help through it, and actually inspired by Jake's video, I made a little how-to on how to get onto the SLC Discord. So that's there if anyone needs it to kind of walk through the process. But I think students hopped on it pretty quickly. We have at last count about 90 students that are on the Discord server, so they seem to be adapting pretty well.
How about in the other centers? Do you see any large onboarding that needed to happen with students, or were they able to pick it up?
Most students were able to pick it up quickly, I think. I've set my Discord up so that it's mainly to be a starting point, and then I've instructed my tutors to be flexible with regards to what works best for each student. Some people prefer Zoom, so they want a Zoom meeting, and my tutors know how to do that. Some people like online whiteboards. A lot of them just send pictures of the math they've written down, and the tutor will send a picture back. It really depends. We're being flexible.
And as for me, yeah, I guess there's always a little bit of a learning curve whenever there's some new app or platform or technology involved when it comes to the delivery of a service and all that. As far as I can tell, most of the students who used our Discord server, were fine. Though I did occasionally hear from, one or two students about how, going onto Discord just seemed like an extra and unnecessary step, especially when we have our asynchronous service in the form of the OWL, where again, students would just submit a paper and then just, get written feedback from a tutor in 2 or 3 business days. So yeah, a little bit of a learning curve, but I mean, for the most part, I think it was successful. I want to add to that, just like Jake, I'm conceiving of our Discord server as just mainly a starting point. So the Discord server is where student and tutor initially meet. And then from there, I just sort of allow them to decide between themselves what app or platform they're most comfortable using for conducting and proceeding with the tutoring session itself. So it's really just up to the tutor and the student. They can start on Discord and use their in-app services and everything, but they can migrate elsewhere if they want.
I really like that I'm hearing that you all are trying really hard, not only yourselves, but with the tutors as well, to focus on being flexible to this new situation and being student-driven in the approaches that you're doing. And maybe it's because it's tutoring and learning centers, so you all are familiar with different learning styles and are trying to be adaptive in the way that you're approaching this anyway. Have you found that tutors and students are working together well in this online environment? We often think of students of being the most technologically savvy. Are they working well in this new format?
I think there's some growing pains, but as we've all discussed, we've been really flexible and adaptable with where the tutoring occurs, what platform, and where we could best meet the students where they're at. I've been really heartened to see how flexible faculty have been and how much they've been putting themselves out there. So prior to us going remote in the Science Learning Center, quite a few faculty facilitated their office hours in the Science Learning Center. And so a lot of them have migrated their office hours from in person to being remote on our Discord server. So it's neat to see them on there interacting. It's common to see a student ask a question and a tutor work with them, then maybe a faculty hops on and provides a little bit more clarification or adds on to an explanation. So it's neat to see those interactions that are typical in the center environment move on to that online environment.
Are you seeing similar types of happenstance interactions like that in the Math Center?
I am. It's been mixed. A lot of students, most of them get on Discord fairly easily and get started up pretty easily. Some people are very upset that they can't get their face-to-face tutoring. Most are understanding and are very appreciative that we have these platforms available now. And I've heard good things from the people that use it, so I'm happy with that.
And yeah, I mean, I think I have similar testimony here. For the most part, they're working fine. Though I think, like I said before, I've noticed the occasional tendency for somebody to confess their preference for the OWL, just because it's a little bit easier and everything. You know, again, it seems like an extra step, and there's a bit of a learning curve. But from the interactions I have seen in our public lobby, where the tutor and the student initially meet, yeah, it's been pretty positive. And my tutors have been responsive and flexible, and they've been able to adapt. And students just kind of go along with it because they're there expecting a service. So, yeah, I'd say it's overall fairly positive.
Has moving online with tutoring afforded any opportunities to expand services to different hours or days of the week than previously when we were face-to-face?
Absolutely, for the SLC. This is something that has come up in conversation prior to COVID-19, was encouragement from extended studies in particular to consider doing evening hours or weekend hours. The constraint has always been that we've always thought within this in-person model that it's just difficult to have students come back on campus after they've left for the day. So didn't see that as a very feasible way to go about it. But now that we've utilized this platform and the students have been utilizing it, the tutors feel that it's working, that when we do eventually go back to an in-person model, we want to keep our use of Discord going and expand our hours beyond what we do on campus into the evening and potentially weekend, where we would do like some on-call type of hours. If the student hops on, then a tutor could be designated to be on call during that time frame.
How about with math?
Very much the same. With the move to online classes, I wanted to make sure that we supported students whenever they needed us. So I've also expanded to some weekend hours and some evening hours. And it's also something we've been trying to do before all of this happened, but Discord seems to be a very effective way of doing that. And ideally, we'd keep the Discord going forward as well, too, in at least some capacity.
We, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about expanded hours and weekend hours and stuff like that. And we actually, the writing room tried a little bit of an experiment with that over the course of like a year and a half or so, a little while back, where we stayed open until like 7 p.m. And we found that almost nobody ever used us. So we were a little saddened by that. However, I still think there's a place for the Discord server. You know, in some form or fashion, it can definitely play a role in the delivery and administering of our services. So, for example, one thing I'm kicking around is perhaps keeping the Discord server around as a sort of hotline service where somebody can just kind of chime in with a question, a simple question that can be answered over the course of 5 to 10 minutes, and you know, thereby not necessitating some sort of traditional face-to-face session or an OWL session for that matter. So I do still see a place for the Discord server. I see a role it can play going forward, even when the world reopens and we all go back to our offices and stuff like that.
So it sounds like even though these choices were made out of to address some very unique challenges, there are things and lessons learned that you want to continue with in the future. I think we can take that as a win. Are there any other wins that you've experienced in this that you'd like to mention?
I've been just proud overall of the flexibility and adaptability I've seen all over campus. We've seen it at the student level. I've seen it certainly at the faculty level with their diversification and instruction and being so willing to support students via doing their own office hours, review sessions, things like that. I think it's been positive overall. And I've been heartened to see how many students still want to have that face-to-face interaction. Something that has been surprising for me is at the end of the spring semester, when I was preparing to do my evaluations with my tutors, my end of year evaluations with them on performance, I had kind of given them the option that we could either just kind of text via the Discord message, or we could do like a Zoom face-to-face. I didn't think any of them would want to do a Zoom face-to-face, but I was really surprised that like more than half of them wanted to Zoom, and they really just wanted to talk and to have that interaction. So it's been kind of a neat thing that's been a little counterintuitive, that they do want, a lot of students still want that face-to-face interaction, and that they're not awkward about getting on Zoom to talk with folks.
What about some wins for the Math Center, Jake? I'm sure you have at least one.
One of the wins that I've found is now that we've moved online and we have this Discord platform, the tutors are talking to themselves more often and helping each other out with tutoring more often. One of the weird things about mathematics is you can major in mathematics, and there are courses that we have on campus that we help with that a majority of our tutors will never learn those subjects in a classroom. They just kind of learn it in the Math Learning Center, or if they audit the class, that's another way. And I've seen tutors communicating about these things and explaining them to each other so that they can help the students in these classrooms. And it's fantastic. I love it.
So almost creating their own little learning community to better support the students that they're tutoring. That's so cool to hear. What about with the Writing Center, Chad?
Yeah, I think there's been an appreciable amount of freedom that's been enabled by this horrible set of circumstances that we're all living under right now. If there is any silver lining in this whole thing, and I know it's hard to find that, again, given the circumstances, I think it would be that my tutors have been responsive and adaptive, and no one's ever late to a shift anymore. Because of the amount of freedom that's been enabled by the whole work from home scenario that we're operating under. Also, again, speaking to that flexibility and everything, we're still able to administer our services regardless of whether or not we're actually in a physical location. So students who might not otherwise be able to see us in person, can still receive what I hope is high quality writing tutorial support, for them and everything. So the flexibility, the freedom, all that, I'd call all of those wins.
I think it's interesting, but echoing across what all of you've said, it's important to have these physical spaces, and there's something to be said about being all in the same place, learning together. But we've had the same experience in the library, that just because we're in this online remote environment, we aren't necessarily suffering. It's just making us have to rethink the way that we're working with our students and our tutors. And it sounds like all of you have excellent tutors that we should really give some kudos to.
Absolutely.
So thank you all so very, very much for being here with us today. We'll have links to more information and contacts for these wonderful centers on our campus. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them or us if we can be of any way supporting you and your students through this complicated time. We hope that we've given you a chance to think about some of the wins and happy moments in all of this as well. Thanks for being with us, Abby, Chad, Jake. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was fun.
Thank you.